Story 1. The Child Sidekick Program. Mr. Nifty turned his megawatt smile towards the news camera as two black-clad figures, one who couldn't be older than 9, struggled with the police behind him. And that is when I apprehended an Agent Crow and his little sidekick. The reporter is following Mr. Nifty's face with his starry eyes. First you heard it here, folks. Mr. Nifty saved our city one more time. You have served this country for like 30 years. That's why I could not help noticing. Who is your newest sidekick? Mr. Nifty stepped aside with a flourish of his cape to show a young girl dressed in similar garb, her pint-sized cape fluttering in the breeze. The girl beamed at the camera and flexed her noodle arms. This is my protege, Kid Peachy. Welly looked up from the television and called over his shoulder. See, Mom, even Mr. Nifty has a kid sidekick. Professor Scare sighed heavily from the kitchen. We've talked about this, Welly. Just look at her. She's like 10. I'm almost 12, and I bet I'm way tougher. Welly stood up and mirrored Kid Peachy's pose. Yeah, my arms are twice as big. The professor poked her head around the doorframe and smiled at her son, the citron tassel on her velvet tam swinging merrily. You're getting stronger every day, too. So why won't you train me? I've been asking for years and years, and you keep saying it's not right for kids to be sidekicks. Welly crossed his arms, his lower lip sticking out in a childish pout. But Mr. Nifty is a hero, and he has Kid Peachy, so how can it be wrong? Professor Scare entered the room and sat on the couch next to her son, muting the television. Just because someone is a hero doesn't mean they always do the right thing. She tousled his hair with her one functional hand. Welly swatted her hand away with a grin. I don't want to be a hero anyway, he said. I want to be your sidekick. Life as a villain, well, it's lonely. But we have each other. Yes, we do. Keeping you safe and away from fighting is the best way to make sure we keep it like that. Professor Scare watched the silent images on the television as the reporter interviewed Kid Peachy. She shook her head and flexed her good hand. It's just not ethical to make children fight in battles started by adults. But what if that's what I want? Welly countered. Being a villain isn't a practical career path, well. It was for you. And how are you a villain anyway? You don't even do anything bad. The professor looked at her useless hand, scarred and forever clenched in an open fist. I didn't have a choice. Welly curled his lip into a sneer. And that sucks, doesn't it, Mom? But you're not giving me a choice either. Honey, maybe it's because you're a villain, and that's why you won't let me do what I want. He stood up abruptly, his hands balled into little fists. I want to be a sidekick. Professor Scare reached for Welly's hand, but he yanked it away. Well, please, I want a better life for you than mine. I even came up with a cool sidekick name, Welly continued. Teaching Assistant Terror. Please, Mom, I'm ready. The professor smiled sadly at him. That's a great sidekick name, Well. I'd be honored to have you on my team. Welly gave her a well-practiced side-eye. But I won't compromise my ethics and perpetuate this trend of child soldiers. If you still want to be my sidekick when you turn 18, we'll discuss it then. I don't need your permission to be a sidekick. I can do it myself. Well, Welly turned his back to his mom and marched to the door. And I'll be a sidekick to a big, powerful hero. And then you'll be sorry you ever decided to be a villain. He slammed the door to the little apartment and ran down the building's stairs until he burst outside, tears brimming at the corners of his eyes. Billboards, each more flashy than the last, blotted out the view of the sky in his part of town. One massive billboard showed kids of all ages in various hero attire. Register as a sidekick now, the ad urged. At the bottom, in bright green Comic Sans, the ad listed the address for the Supers Registry Office downtown. He wiped his eyes on his sleeve and started walking. A dainty bell rang when Welly pushed open the door to the registry office. The registrar looked up when he walked in, and he said hello with a smile. He asked the young man, "Why don't you take a seat? I will be with you after some time." She then looked back at that frustrated man who was standing so stupid. The man said, "You can come up with something different if you like, sir, but Icicle Man is already a registered name." "I don't want to come up with something different. I'm a man, and I create icicles. No other name makes sense." "As I said, sir, Icicle Man is available, as is Icicle Man 123. Ugh, those are ridiculous. My apologies, sir. The name will remain unavailable as long as Icicle Man is registered to a living super. A sinister grin spread slowly over the man's face. As long as he's living, eh? Thank you for that information. As the man stalked out of the office, he fixed his creepy smile on Welly. Good luck, kid, he hissed. the bright-sounding bell over the door directly contrasting the man's rapidly darkening aura. Welly approached the registrar's desk, stomach roiling and eyes wide. She slipped on a tiny pair of glasses dangling on a beaded chain around her neck. "How can I help you today?" "Did you see that?" he asked her, his breaths hitching as he calmed his thudding heart. "I think that the man is going to become a villain. Heroes cannot be a hero without an equal number of villains against them," she then explained. She waved her hand dismissively. "After some time, we have had an influx of hero registrations, so we have to update our policies to discourage the new enrollment." The vocabulary wasn't entirely familiar, as his fifth-grade education did not include contractual agreements. He was about to sign the documents rather than give himself a headache trying to read them all when a paragraph caught his attention. "By signing, I hereby assume all risks of being a child sidekick, including, but not limited to, any risks that may arise from negligence or carelessness on the part of my assigned hero or their associated partners, from dangerous situations that may arise with or without provocation on the part of my assigned hero, or from the use of unsafe or defective equipment or property owned or maintained by my assigned. This has the desired effect of angering would-be heroes enough that they choose a different path." "That's horrible," Welly whispered. "In addition," the registrar continued, "we expanded the list of undesirable disfigurements that would require a mandatory villain registration. Now it includes moles." The registrar gave Welly a wan smile and quickly changed the subject. "So tell me, young man, are you here to register for the Child Sidekick program?" He straightened his back and squared his shoulders to look bigger. "That's right." "Excellent!" Her cheerful demeanor returned as she handed him a stack of papers and a pen capped with an unnecessarily large artificial flower. "Sign these forms and then we'll get you on your way to Sidekick superstardom." The papers were printed with very small text, and Welly found himself squinting to read it properly. "Row, I acknowledge that neither my family nor I am entitled to any compensation in the event of my injury, dismemberment, and/or demise as a result of my child sidekick responsibilities, and I further acknowledge and accept that all rights to an attorney or other representation have been waived." Welly frowned, and his pen stalled above the signature line. He hadn't considered that he might get hurt or even die as a child sidekick. If he were working with a hero, surely they would never put their sidekicks in harm's way. Then he thought back to his mom and her ruined hand. She'd never told him the whole story, but she had alluded once that she had been a sidekick for a hero in her early years. He stood up and brought his stack of papers back to the registrar. "I'd like to think about this some more before I sign. Maybe talk to my mum." The registrar peered at him over her tiny spectacles, a spark of recognition in her eyes. "You're Professor Scare's boy, aren't you?" "I am. She won't let you be her sidekick." Welly clenched his teeth. "No." The registrar took Welly's stack of unsigned papers and slid them into a cubby on her desk. "She must love you very much then." Welly scowled at her and strode to the door. "You don't know what you're talking about," he grumbled as the bell jangled happily over his head. Welly flopped onto the bench next to the registry office. He looked up at the billboard across the street that featured his mum's tutoring business for the children of villains. While he glared at her smiling face, a bright flash caught his eye. A silver-clad hero landed in front of an unmarked storefront under the billboard. The hero, easily recognizable as Lord Gorgeous, was carrying a small boy in a matching silver outfit. The boy wasn't moving, and blood dripped from his head to the sidewalk. Welly stood and was about to call out and offer help when a panel slid open in one of the storefront's blacked-out windows. Lord Gorgeous unceremoniously shoved the child into the portal before shooting back into the sky and disappearing behind the skyscrapers. Welly, curiosity piqued, jogged across the street as the panel sealed shut. He pushed his fingers toward the glass in search of the seamlessly integrated panel. Welly tapped the glass softly to test the weaknesses. The panel slid open so abruptly that he gasped and stepped back. A nurse's frazzled face peered out at him. "Are you hurt, sidekick?" the nurse asked. "I'm not," Welly began. "This clinic is for injured or maimed child sidekicks only. Please move along." Before the nurse could slide the panel back into place, Welly got a view of a bustling clinic housed behind the painted windows. Several children in heroic costumes were hooked up to life-saving medical equipment. Others were lying in bloody beds and moaning. Still more children sat in folding chairs, some with missing limbs and many with the thousand-yard stare of the broken. The child in silver lay crumpled on the floor, unnaturally still and ignored, as blood puddled underneath him. The panel snapped back in place, blocking all view of the secret clinic. Welly stood in shock on the sidewalk, trying to process the scene he had witnessed. For the first time, he wondered if the child sidekick industry wasn't as broken as some of the bodies he had seen in the clinic. His mum's face flashed into his mind, and his stomach twisted at the horrible things he had said to her earlier. He needs to get home and he wanted to apologize to his mother, and the guilt quickened his pace. Welly was going very fast, and after some time he arrived back home. The door of the apartment was ajar, and Welly tried to remember that if he has closed it when he ran out. A crashing noise inside the apartment masked the sound of squeaking hinges as Welly opened the door. The hair on his neck rose when muted voices echoed down the entry hallway. He peeked around the corner into the living room. Mr. Nifty's imposing, cape-clad figure loomed over Professor Scare, lying on the area rug among shards of the awkward vase Welly made in 3rd grade. The television was still silently broadcasting the news, showing what looked like slow-motion reruns of Mr. Nifty's earlier heroics. Kid Peachy stood awkwardly next to Mr. Nifty and fidgeted with the hem of her cape. "Do it then," Mr. Nifty instructed his sidekick. Kid Peachy looked at him with huge, imploring eyes. "I don't want to," she whispered. Welly couldn't see Mr. Nifty's face, but his tone had turned low and dangerous. "Professor Scare is a villain, Kid Peachy. A villain, if you want to become a hero, then you should first destroy villains. Now do it." Kid Peachy took a small step forward. "This doesn't feel like something a hero would do. Can't we just arrest her?" "Why are you so weak, Mr. Nifty smacked a meaty hand against the back of Kid Peachy's head, knocking her eye mask askew. "Do it, or I'll tell the registry about your horrible disfigurement." "I don't Not yet, Peach. But the professor didn't either until she disobeyed me. You'll be forced to become a villain yourself, and make no mistake, I will be the first person at your door to serve justice." Professor Scare lifted her head to meet Mr. Nifty's eyes. "Don't make her do this, Jim." Mr. Nifty silenced her with a kick in the ribs, eliciting a soft moan of pain. "Mom!" Welly ran from the door towards Professor Scare's prone form. Mr. Nifty grabbed Welly's arm and plucked him from the ground. "Do it now, Peach," he hissed. Fat tears ran down Kid Peachy's face, but she drew a wicked blade out of her belt. Welly aimed a kick at Mr. Nifty's ribs, and the hero pushed him down to the ground. "You watch," Mr. Nifty whispered. "You watch what happens to villains, boy." Kid Peachy took a deep breath and held the knife over the professor's neck. "Welly," Professor Scare croaked, "I love you well." Kid Peachy's blade bit into the professor's skin. Mr. Nifty released his grip on Welly's arm when Professor Scare took her last wheezing breath. Welly sprang to his feet and threw himself at Mr. Nifty with a desperate scream. The hero shoved Welly back to the ground and pressed his face into the rug. A pottery shard sliced into Welly's cheek. "Careful, boy," Mr. Nifty said, straightening back up. "That might scar." Welly barely registered Mr. Nifty confidently striding out the front door. "Come along, sidekick. We have more villains to exterminate." Kid Peachy lingered at the corner of Welly's eye, her expression filled with deep regret. She wiped the tears from her face with her cape, and then she was gone. "Mom!" He reached out and grabbed Professor Scare's ruined hand. Welly pulled himself into a sitting position and gathered his mum's body in his arms. He wasn't sure how long he sat there, but it was dark, and his tears had long since dried when he finally stood up. Mr. Nifty's cleanup team would undoubtedly arrive soon. Welly carefully removed his mum's black doctoral robes and pulled them over his head. The hem pooled around his feet. Like the robe, Professor Scare's tam was too large for him, and the soft citron tassel brushed his collarbone. Welly touched his cheek, then examined his bloody fingers. In the morning, he vowed, the super's office would register a new Professor Scare. Story 2. Meeting in the dark. "Jacksa, no," as Jackrabbit screamed as the solid rock on which he was standing suddenly gave out, and then he found himself hurtling into the dark. The paladin quick shriek, before he hit the ground thudly, right behind him. "Oof!" he grunted. His whole body hurt, but he was pleasantly surprised to find the fall was shorter than he expected. He looked up towards the dim light of his companions' torches. "Jax?" one of them called down, worry in his voice. "I'm all right," the Jackrabbit called up, seeing the furry lagomorph faces of his companions peering down at him. "We can't get you out of there," Commander Lurch called down to him. "We don't have any spare rope." "We have to press on," Lily, the lone female of their troop, added. Jaxa silently cursed. "It's okay, I'll find a way back up to you. You three press on, find the ancient texts, the texts to destroy Veilwinter." "Catch!" one of his mates said as a torch was tossed down to him. The paladins of Tyr had been given a task: to enter the cursed, cavernous realms of the abyss and find an ancient tome. A tome that was said to hold the key to destroying their current prime enemy, the sinister cult of the Vale Winter Temple. They knew the trip would be dangerous. In fact, it was one they would very likely not survive. But if it meant destroying their enemies, it was a journey their oaths had compelled them to make. Time passed differently in the abyss. They had been inside for mere hours, but on the surface, days could have already passed. Those that returned from the abyss had usually become mad, to say nothing of the voracious giant insects and undead they had already encountered who would clean up any survivors. It truly was closer to the hells physically and in spirit than anywhere else. Jaxor lit his torch, the light of the flames showing runes etched into the stone floor. "Where exactly am I?" the hare asked himself aloud. "I know where you are," a raspy voice grunted. "You're down here, with me." "Who's there?" Jaxor shouted, thrusting his torch out. The flickering light showed a creature in a tattered green cloak, a muzzle protruding from the cowl. Looked like a canine of some sort. Jaxor didn't trust canines, even ones who were supposedly paladins of Tyr. He especially didn't trust canines who loomed out of the darkness of the abyss. "Stay back," Jaxor ordered. The canine lifted a gnarled old paw. "I mean you no harm. I have been down here for a long time. A long, long, long time." Jaxor swiveled an ear back. "You live here alone?" A low chuckle. "I suppose you could say I was thrown down here, but others will claim that I jumped in willingly, and I've been trapped ever since." The figure drew closer, and Jaxor recoiled reflexively. "Look," Jaxor said, stepping backward into the dark. "I can't help you. I need to get back to my companions." The cloak tilted his head. Yes. The abyss is a dangerous place. Perhaps I could be of assistance." The jackrabbit scowled. "I doubt that." The figure drew closer, leaning against a cane of some sort. Whoever he was damn persistent. "Why are you here?" "I'm not going to tell you that." Jaxor scowled as he looked around with his torch. "You came for knowledge, perhaps?" the mysterious figure rasped. That perked up Jaxor's interest. "You know of the thing I am searching for?" The figure drew closer. "The ancient texts, the grimoire. Yes, I know of it, and I can take you to its resting place." Jaxor drew closer, the light of his torch reflecting briefly in the figure's eyes before he turned his head away from the light. "You can get me there?" Jaxor questioned. "Most certainly," the figure rasped. "Please, this way." A gnarled hand beckoned the jackrabbit. "You first," Jaxor grunted. The shroud laughed. "Do you not trust me?" "I don't know you," Jaxor replied. His paw kept a firm grip on his torch, his other paw resting on his dagger. The figure shifted. "Well then, let's change that, shall we? Would you mind if you called me Scott?" Jaxor shook his fluffy head, his long ears flapping. "Call me Jaxor." "This way," Scott grunted, shuffling along the dark. Jaxor drew closer, the light of his torch reflecting briefly in the figure's eyes before he turned his head away from the light. "You can get me there?" Jaxor questioned. "Most certainly," the figure rasped. "Please, this way," a gnarled hand beckoned the jackrabbit. "You first," Jaxor grunted. The shroud laughed. "Do you not trust me?" "I don't know you," Jaxor replied. His paw kept a firm grip on his torch, his other paw resting on his dagger. The figure shifted. "Well then, let's change that, shall we? Would you mind if you called me Scott?" Jaxor shook his fluffy head, his long ears flapping. "Call me Jaxor." "This way," Scott grunted, shuffling along the dark. Hesitantly, the jackrabbit followed after the strange canid, his sword drawn in case there was any funny business. The two plodded along, Scott leading the way. "The abyss is no place for gentle creatures. You've no doubt learned this already." Jaxor grunted. "I'm no gentle creature. I'm an elite paladin, bringer of the light. My superiors entrusted me and my companions to carry out this mission." "Your superiors sent you down here to die," Scott retorted. "If we must sacrifice ourselves, we will. Others will follow after us," Jaxor said, thumping his chest. Scott chuckled. "Brave of you, truly inspiring. I was just like you. I saw my father as a hero. I want to be like him. He killed a wicked king with just a bow. It was a sword, his wits, and some loyal beasts. I tried following in his footsteps, but getting out of one's shadow is a difficult process. Sometimes you never really leave the shadow." Jaxor paused. I actually understand what you mean, our fellowship. I'm always taken for granted. Scott turned his hood towards him. And you wish to stand out? I want to be appreciated, Jaxa replied. Scott stopped walking. A subtle twitch of his ear, nearly imperceptible in the gloom, betrayed satisfaction. He turned his head slightly, the firelight from Jaxa's torch catching the faintest glint of sharp teeth. Oh, you will be, Scott said softly. Down here, everyone finds who they really are. The Abyss has a way of stripping off the masks we wear. Jaxa frowned, the comment scratching at something just beneath his thoughts. Let's keep moving, the young rabbit said. Of course, Scott replied smoothly. They continued, the stone below their feet becoming more twisted, the runes on the walls more confused, as it carved by irritated hand. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of old ashes and something else. Something wrong. Jaxa's grip on his torch tightened. So this grimoire, Jaxa ventured, breaking the silence. What do you know of it? Scott didn't answer at first. When he did, his voice was quieter, almost reverent. It's older than any temple you've ever sworn yourself to, written by a being who saw not just the truth of light and dark, but the frailty of both. Its words reshape minds, its pages bleed secrets. That doesn't sound like something to wield lightly. No, Scott said. And yet, can your enemies be destroyed with half measures? Can Vale Winter be ended by righteousness alone? Jaxa didn't respond. Scott went on, his pace slowing. The paladins will send more after you, and after them, more, until none are left. The grimoire is power, not to destroy you, but to save you, to save all of you. Jaxa hesitated, ears twitching. Here we are, Scott said. A cold wind from somewhere deep in the crevices of the world chilled Jaxa's thick winter fur. They stood before a door, or something like a door. A jagged arch of obsidian black bone jutted from the earth, rimmed with pulsing crimson sigils. A sense of vertigo washed over Jaxa as he gazed at it. He asked Scott, "How do we get past this?" A low chuckle. "You have to want to. It requires purity of intent." "Purity?" Jaxa questioned. "Not goodness," Scott clarified. "Just commitment, resolve, the will to choose, even if the choice costs you everything." He turned to the jackrabbit, the torchlight revealing for just a moment something under the fur of the creature that Jaxa didn't recognize. Jaxa blinked, unsure of what he had just seen. "And a sacrifice," Scott added in his raspy voice. "What?" Jaxa said. "The opening of this gateway requires your commitment, your resolve, and something more." Jaxa blinked again, one of his ears twitching. "What happened to you, Scott? What did you give up?" "I made a choice. Now it is your turn. The grimoire is powerful, no? You seek power. Power to do what is of no concern of mine, but the shortest road to power always requires sacrifice." Jaxa twitched his nose. "Do I have to cut my own arm off?" Scott bellowed a laugh, setting the jackrabbit's fur to stand on end. "Oh, how quaint. First consider, then decide. Once you have chosen, I shall either guide you through the doors, or you will find the others hiding in the dark and beg for their guidance instead." Jaxa thought about him swearing his oath to Tyre on the altar. He thought of Lily's smile and Lursh's firm voice, but he also remembered Lily overlooking him, Lursh not calling on him for anything unless necessary. "I just want to be seen." Scott kept speaking. "Has your faith, your God, alone been enough to defeat Vale Winter?" Jaxa almost responded with the standard answer of how mighty Tyr was, but before he did, all he saw were his lost friends, dead, reduced to madness, or made into empty, soulless vessels of Vale Winter. Scott raised up his snout. "From your silence I gather that your oath, your prayers, and your God have been unable to stem the tide of evil." His voice softened. "Perhaps your answer lies behind this door. Perhaps it does not. At least you will have tried." Jaxa stepped forward. Even though he felt his very soul screaming at him to stop, Scott guided the young paladin to a circular rune carved into the floor of the cave and handed him a knife, seemingly carved from some kind of bone. It glowed gently with an inner light. Still softly the canine spoke. "Just a splash will do. Spill on the floor, and be sure to cover the rune completely." Jaxa swallowed as he made a shallow cut to his palm, wincing as he did and letting the blood spill upon the floor. "Yes," Scott said. "More. Cover it completely." The pain Jax was feeling was searing. Not only in his palm, but somewhere else too. The knife, definitely a bone of some kind, glowed brighter in his hand, and when the ritual, or whatever it was done, Jack saw something in his companion that made his very soul recoil. The fox was but bones and mummified flesh held together by magic. Jackson knew this decision would haunt him forever. "Excellent," Scott said as the huge stone double doors surged with red lines of magic and began creaking open. "I know what you are. I know who you are," Jaxa said in a trembling voice. "Does it matter?" the ancient evil said, pointing towards a column in the distance, illuminated by red light, whereupon a large black book sat. "Look before you, young one, the grimoire, and you have retrieved it. For me." Jaxa ran for it as the lich cackled. His paws grabbed the book, which he thought was bound by leather, but as he looked upon the book he found it was bound of skin from a beast like him. "I'll not let you have it. You've lost, vile vermin." Scott did not reply. He just watched the paladin run. "Savareth," Scott said. "Traveler, your wills be done." Jaxa run, and as the jackrabbit ran, visions began to fill his mind. Villages afire, himself standing upon bones. Still the old lich's voice echoed after him. "You know, I tried to live after my father's image. I tried to be a hero once too." "I don't care," Jaxa shouted, his eyes watering. More visions filling his mind as he found himself running through the darkened caverns. "Little bunny," came another voice, colder than the steps. "No, I am mighty, I am strong," Jaxa shouted to the darkness. "I will be the greatest hero of all." "Indeed you will," the voice said, like a scar on his mind. "Jax? Jax?" A friendly voice for once. Up ahead on a nearby cliff came friendly lights. "I got it, friends, I got it." "Finally you did something right," Lurch said, a little teasing in his voice as he pulled Jax up. Jaxa bristled. "You never respected me." "What are you?" Lurch stated before he recoiled, nearly dropping Jax back down. "What vile thing is this?" "It's an abyss creature masquerading as our friend," Lily shouted, pointing her clerical staff, burning with tears light, towards him. "Friend? Friend? Is that all I ever was to you?" Jaxa shouted. "Get that light out of my face, Lily." "They are not your friends," another voice, subtle, quiet, very similar to his own, whispered. "They wish to harm you. They are not who they seem." Jaxa recoiled. "No, you're not my friends. You are the abyssal creatures." What happened next was hard to say. There were flashes of light and splotches of darkness darker than the rest. There was a rasp of blades, cried of pain, and the scent of blood being spilled. When it was over, the stones were wet with the blood of his friends. Their bodies opened on the cold ground. Looks like a careless child had thrown them on the ground. He said, "What I have done, what I have become now," Jaxa thought, clutching the wound in his side that burned his soul. Lily's staff lay on the ground in her own blood, flickering. Tyr's light wasn't welcoming or comforting anymore. It was killing him. Chittering, then the sound of 100 chitinous feet. A giant centipede scampered past Jaxa, then eyed the motionless bodies of his friends. It reared up on its tremendous thorax and came down, splitting Lily's body in two. Abyss dwellers recognized their own, and this place was now his home, or more accurately, his tomb. Story 3. The highest form. Clara looked back out to the street. A few houses nearby still had lights on. She could see the silhouette of a man drinking out a mug in his kitchen, pacing around. It seemed like he had enough going on not to notice her. Besides, the porch light was off. No one could see her from that far. She looked to another window. A cat sat on the windowsill, its eyes reflecting the moonlight. It could be staring right at her, Clara thought. She waved. "Hi," she whispered to the darkness anxiously. He said, "Sobel, is that you?" he asked. Then a woman called out from the sidewalk. Clara nearly screamed. From the few details she could make out, the woman was old. A tiny dog was scurrying behind her, also old. "Sable, didn't mean to startle you, hun. Have a good night." The woman continued on her way into the darkness. Clara gulped slowly, worried the woman would hear that she wasn't Sable in the slightest noise. She took a few steps down from the front door and looked to see if the woman had really left. Clara was getting frustrated, acting as if she was doing anything wrong. It was Sable that stole yet another hairband. She knew it was on purpose this time too. Sabel had a weird fascination with her. One day, Clara would show up to Zumba in blue Spanx and yellow tank top. The very next class, Sabel would show up in the exact same outfit. It wasn't just that, though. Sabel would laugh really loud at anything Clara said at the gym, even when Clara was sure she was out of earshot. There was one time where Clara ordered the matcha raspberry protein shake with almond milk from the cafe counter. Sabel went up right after her and ordered 5 more of the exact same protein shake. The hair tie was a step too far this time. Nobody saw. But when Clara went up to her locker, the lock was broken and the door was ajar. One of her hair ties was missing, one of her favorite, actually. The color is called aubergine. It reminded Clara of acai bowls. She saw someone slip out of the locker room from the other door that day, and she would testify in court that the person was wearing the exact same outfit she was wearing during the previous Thursday Zumba class. Clara was staring at one of the side windows into Sabel's house now. It was pitch black, not even a night light. Clara snickered as she pictured Sabel stubbing her toes in the night as she wrapped her elbow in her jacket and smashed the glass. She paused a few breaths after the shards finished their ruckus. No noise outside, no noise inside. She reached in delicately and undid the latch. Clara peered inside as she lifted the window and hopped in, avoiding the glass on the kitchen floor. The air was still, the kitchen odorless. Clara thought that if Sabel lived here or not. The fridge light pierced the darkness and nearly blinded Clara, yet she couldn't look away. Packed together as tightly as possible were dozens, maybe 100 protein shakes. All of her favorite orders: chocolate cinnamon with pistachio foam, matcha raspberry, double vanilla espresso cookie. Sabel was psychotic. She was sure of it now. She closed the fridge and let her eyes adjust for a minute. In the silence, Clara swore she heard a muffled voice from below her. She was not alone. Surely they had heard her break the window. Clara told herself Sabel would probably be happy to see her. She found a door along the hallway wall and opened it. It was to the basement. Clara walked down the stair less carefully than she had entered the house, ready to confront Sabel. But when she reached the bottom step, she was face to face with herself. Not really, but a wall of pictures of her stood in her path. There were pictures that were clearly from her Facebook, from trips she had been on, selfies with friends. Then she did not recognize some pictures. At Zumba, when she was chaining her dress in the locker room. The pictures were the inside of her apartments. All of these pictures were joined to a long shower curtain that cut off the rest of the basement, illuminated with candles at her feet. She heard a dull voice again. The was coming from the other side of the curtain. It sounded like a woman whispering, "Sabel, I know you're there. I know you're... I want my hair tie back," she said. No reply. Clara got on her hands and knees and pushed her way under the curtain, heavy with creepy photos of her. Her eyes adjusted again to the sterile fluorescent light that filled the room. She was again face to face with herself, but actually this time... "Hello," said a Clara lookalike. She was wearing an eye patch. Real Clara noticed chunks of her hair were missing. "What the fuck?" asked Clara. The eye-patched Clara snickered. "It really is you?" A Clara on crutches hobbled over. She smiled a toothless grin as she looked Clara over. "What the fuck?" Clara asked again. She felt faint. She felt sick. "You're pale." She heard her voice behind her, but she was too afraid to turn. "Someone go get her a protein shake. Matcha raspberry, okay?" Clara nodded, trying to breathe. "I can't believe we get to meet the real Clara," cheered another Clara, throwing her only arm in the air. "What happened to all of you?" the real Clara asked. She was starting to wonder if she was the real Clara at all. Clara studied the confused expressions of her maimed doppelgangers. "I mean, what happened to your arm? And what happened to your eye? And what happened—" "Oh," the crutched Clara cut her off. "Nothing happened to us. This is what we were born for. To give Mother Sabel her destined life." The one-armed Clara pointed to a vat in the corner of the basement. It was full of a blue liquid, the shade of Clara's favorite Gatorade, Glacier Freeze. The vat also contained Clara herself, but this one looked whole. At the shoulders, Clara saw the arms were stitched on, and the legs at her crotch. There were stitches all over her body. Clara pressed her hand on the vat as she stared at every detail. The vatted Clara twitched. "Mother Sabel stirs. It's almost time," spoke the eye-patched Clara. "The face," real Clara said. "Where did you get the face?" "Clara C. made the ultimate sacrifice," said crutched Clara. All of the Claras looked to an operating table on the other side of the basement. On it, Clara could see what was presumably another one of her with a sheet draped over her top half. "She's only resting," promised the one-armed Clara. I went and got her our favorite hair tie to cheer her up. The real Clara smiled for a moment, then bit her lip. Don't be sad, Clara, said the eye-patched Clara. She'll be okay, we promise. The real Clara nodded silently as she looked at each of the maimed Claras staring back at her. I'll get the protein shakes, she said after a while. Matcha raspberry for everyone. She slipped back under the curtain of photos and took a candle with her up the stairs. She set the candle on the kitchen island and watched the flame dance, but all she could think of was Sable Zumba dancing in the corner of her eye twice a week, watching her the entire time. Clara turned the gas on all the stove burners to high and walked out the front door.